Now, imagine, if you can, a state park located somewhere in California. Imagine 98 acres of sunny, serene redwood forest. You would be at Tara Redwood School, arguably the most peaceful and beautiful learning environment in the whole state of California. Now, in 1989, Pam Cayton had created, implemented, and researched strategies at this school for awakening compassion, wisdom, and social responsibility in the minds and hearts of children. To tell us all about the 7 steps to knowledge, strength, and compassion in this unique secular educational methodology, which blends both East and Western traditions. Please welcome, all the way from California, Pam Cayton.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to, I didn't give you a chance to say good afternoon. Sorry, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you. I'd like to begin by really sincerely thanking the organizers of this event, and also for all of you who've invested your time and resources into being here this afternoon, for yesterday and today, and some of you even came on the Sunday. Because there's nothing, I don't think, more important than us all really taking on this quest to actualize our greatest potential as human beings, in order to make the greatest effect and the greatest positive difference in this world. So thank you, everybody. I'm going to begin with our mindfulness gong. I'm going to introduce the mindfulness gong. We use this throughout the day at the school. We use it for meetings with parents. We use it for staff meetings. And I'm going to instruct you on what we're going to do, a little exercise with it. When I sound the gong, we're going to be stretching up, so be careful of the people next to you, please. It may be an unpleasant experience otherwise, but we're going to be stretching up as we take a breath in, and as we breathe out, we bring our hands slowly down to our heart with our out-breath. We're going to stay in that position, and we're going to take 2 more breaths in and out, in and out. That's all. Focusing on the breath. Okay, you ready for that? A little stretch time, a little time in, I call it. Okay. So nice stretch up, big arms. Bring them together at the top of your head as you breathe in and breathe out. Now again, breathe in and out. All right, so I think it's always good to go back a little bit and look at where this began. And just a correction, actually, in 1989, I hadn't figured out what I was doing by that time, but I knew I really wanted to do something. I arrived in California, the edge of Silicon Valley. Actually, I'm originally an Aussie, and still an Aussie. I'm still an Australian citizen. But I left Australia in 1978, and I spent 10 years, met my husband in Nepal, in a monastic setting in Nepal. We were not monks and nuns, but we were studying there and working there, teaching and working on development programs in the monastery. Well, when we arrived in California, my husband's from California, we arrived on the edge of Silicon Valley 10 years later, after having lived in a third world country for 10 years and worked there. And we had 2 young children at the time, and when I looked around and tried to find the kind of environment the kind of learning environment I would really choose for my children, I could not find it. I found learning environments that had some aspects of really focusing on the development of the whole child, mental, physical, and spiritual. But I couldn't find a system, a way of educating that I really had been inspired by studying under my teacher, Lama Thupten Yeshe. So Lama Yeshe was quite an extraordinary Tibetan Lama. He was a visionary. He was way ahead of his time. He talked about something called universal education more than 30 years ago. So what was his concept of universal education that was now really coming to life for me? I knew I needed to do something to actualize his vision. I didn't know how to do it. Lama Yeshe said, "There is a profound knowledge and wisdom existing everywhere. What is missing is the universal language, which universal people can understand scientifically, logically. One subject contains the essence of religion, philosophy, psychology, all contained in the whole. These all have to exist simultaneously without separation. Education should bring everything together, not separate them." Profound. I didn't know how to do this, but I knew I really wanted to try to make it happen. There were some really noticeable differences for me starting to work with children in California versus having worked with them in, well, a monastic setting in Kathmandu. One of the major differences that I really started to become aware of with the young children and older children, teenagers, was that they seemed to have this sort of attitude of entitlement. An attitude of entitlement and a sort of a lack of appreciation for what they had, what they were given. Not very respectful. And these were things that I didn't see when I was living in Asia. So what was it that really made the difference? I could see that what was happening with the parenting styles, and even for some of the teaching styles, was that children were being given a lot of power, but they were not given very much training in taking responsibility. Whereas in Asia, it was the opposite. There was also a focus in America and most of that I've experienced in developed countries, that there is a focus on the individual, whereas in Asia, there was more of a focus on being a part of a collective. So there was more focus on me. Also, what I became very, very aware of was the incredible impact that the cultures, the societies that we're raised in, have on our children and the development of our children. And not only in the development of our children, but on the adults as well. We know, as Anne was talking about yesterday, the bioecological systems theory, that all aspects of the society we live on ripple down to affect us in some degree or other. And I really saw how this happened. I could see it happening in front of me. The greatest impact we know, though, comes from the home. But what's happening in a lot of the countries and the homes that we live in is a lot of, high divorce rate, about 50% in the States. I think a little less here. And when I've taught all over the world now, through Europe, same. So a little less in some countries. But what that means is that we are all struggling to balance our lives and to find a balance in our lives. And at the same time, things are speeding up with technology, with not just the television anymore, but with the computer games, with the world in their pockets, on their phones, the kids with their phones, and the adults as well. We're all caught up in this. We're all on the treadmill of life. But what I say to parents and I say to teachers is we have to learn to really take responsibility as the guide for these kids. Not just teaching them math and the numbers and the scientific information so that they can get the grades and teaching to the test. We have to connect with them, and we have to help them and guide them to connect with their inner world, because that's what's going to guide them to be able to live a happy, successful, and meaningful life. And what I felt was really needed in order to do that was actually to provide a curriculum that included the development of knowledge, strength, which is that self-confidence, I can do it, and compassion. Once again, I didn't know how to do it, but I knew it wasn't just about filling empty pots. That what I hoped to do was if we could awaken children's, thinking about what Lama Yeshe said, if we could awaken children's awareness to the way things just scientifically existed, the way we exist, our own psychology, then what would arise from that naturally would arise from the children's inner world, their understanding of themselves, what they really want in life, would arise values. So rather than saying, well, you should be kind, because we threw all that out in the 60s anyway, the shoulds and the shouldn'ts, and we know that doesn't work. Rather ask, why be kind? Have them think about it. They say now that children as young as 2 years old can have metacognition. They can think about thought. Young children are very capable of understanding a lot more than we give them credit for. But if we don't ask them the questions, they might not ever really think about it. So I say to parents and teachers, we need to become more intentional. Intentional about the way we're teaching our children, how we're guiding our children. But in order to do that, we need to figure out, what are our values? What do we really want? Then we'll know what our bottom lines are, what the boundaries are, and how we want to guide our children. So what I realized was what we needed was to create an integrated curriculum for the children, something that we could really, day in, day out, when the children came to school, for them to really be able to practice developing these positive qualities, but without telling them that. Help them to go on that journey of discovery. So the first question, the first step to do that was to start where they're at. From the moment we get up in the morning to the moment we go to sleep at night, we have this wish that's mostly unconscious, a wish to be happy, a wish to feel good. But we're mostly just unaware of it. What we're going to have for breakfast, what we're going to wear, where we're going to go, who we're going to spend time with. We're just on automatic. We all are. Basically, sorry to make that assumption, but generally speaking, because our life is very busy. And what I was going to say about us needing to be more intentional was because these societies in this world we live in is very intentional about what they want us to believe, what they want our children to believe. And advertising's everywhere. What are the statistics? 20,000 ads young children, average child, sees in a year. But we're just talking television. What about the computer? What about the cell phones? What about the stores? Every time you go out your door, the billboards, the magazines, the music. These messages are influencing the way we see ourselves. We've been hearing all about that with the brain and the plasticity of the brain. Just thinking something is changing the brain, almost as though it happened, almost as though we did that action. So everything is impacting our reality to some degree or other. But we can impact it as well when we become aware, when we become more self-aware. So the first thing is to ask the children, what do they really want? And I ask parents to ask themselves this. You can ask yourself this now too. What is it that I really value in my life, that I'd want to be a part of my life, that I wouldn't want to sacrifice? And the children articulate it. They write it down. We ask them, what kind of a classroom do you really want to come to each day, the beginning of the school year? And they think about it. We guide them, because we're the guides. And we say, well, do you want to come to a classroom where children are saying, hey, come on, you can be my friend, come sit with me. Oh, hey, yeah, sure, you can play with this. I'll share with you. And very quickly, when asked those questions, they come up with the same kind of universal values like love, kindness, sharing, hugs, peace, happiness, the same kind of values that come up when I ask the adults and the parents those things. So they articulate it, they put their wishes together, and we put it on the wall, and that becomes their wish list. This is our environment representing our classroom we want to come to each day. Then after a few days go by, say, well, how's it going? Do we have this classroom we really wished for? And then they start to come up. Well, no, she did this, or he did this. So the blame game starts, because it's naturally what we do. We have this propensity, right, to look at the negatives and what's not good enough, and to be looking outside ourselves. Who's not creating it for us? So we say, okay, so how are we going to create this fantastic space that we want to come to each day? We all wanted it. Do we wait for the other person to do it? Then we know we could have a room full of cops sort of busting each other. That's no fun for anybody. What about if we do it ourselves? Would that work? Would that make the magic happen? And the children, wow, think about it. I guess that makes sense. Then it would start to happen. So then they start to practice it themselves. They take the personal responsibility for creating the kind of environment they want to come to each day. A classroom full of kindness, sharing, all those good qualities that they wished for. So we say, wishes are like seeds. If I held this sunflower seed and said, I wish it would grow, I wish it would grow, is it going to grow? It's not going to grow. Why not? Because we have to do something. Same thing with creating the kind of world we want to live in, the kind of home we want to live in, the kind of classroom we want to come to each day, the kind of workplace we want to go to each day. We need to do it and take personal responsibility. So then we have the kindness detectives, where they actually observe and watch for the kindness, the actions that their friends are doing to make that magic happen. And they recognize those qualities at the end of the day. So we're creating at the same time this community, this culture of appreciation. So this question of we have to take action, what kind of actions are going to be, what is a kind action? What does it look like? Where does it come from? It comes from the individual. And then they'll start to articulate the different specific actions that would lead to that. And that brings us to our next step, which is interconnection. Interconnection is, can you think of anything, just like our classroom has to come from those kinds of actions. Our wonderful classroom, can you think of anything that doesn't come from something? And they think about it. And this is an integrated curriculum, by the way. We cycle this through all the different subjects. This is not about putting something on top of what already exists in your curriculum and what you have to teach your children. It's about teaching it and learning about these things from the way they exist. And what comes from interconnection is this understanding that absolutely everything we have, all the pleasures we enjoy, everything comes from the labors of many others. And so this lack of appreciation and entitlement that I used to see in children, you don't see anymore. You see, in fact, this aha, wow, absolutely everything. In fact, my own body, my own life has come from others. And not only that, but everything we do affects others. affects others in our immediate environment, and ripples out and gets passed around from them as well. So it's an incredibly empowering. But what comes out of this are really fine values, appreciation, gratitude. And all of this interconnected world that we live in is constantly changing. Absolutely everything. Even neuroscientists now talk about how our brain is changing every moment. From the tiniest subatomic particle all the way out to the universe, everything is constantly changing. So change and the fact when children learn about this, and they see it in their environment, in the weather, in their body, in their mind, in their thoughts, in their emotions, possibility becomes real. Anything is possible. Resilience. A lot of talk about resilience these days. So resilience can become a reality. It's just the way you see yourself in the world. Possibility. Perception. We know that just as everything is changing, our brain is constantly changing. Our thoughts are changing. Our emotions are changing. The big question with perception is, do we all see things the same way? And the children start to discover through their own thinking and their own logical reasoning and exploration that actually we don't. We can all be looking at the same thing and see something different. So what comes from this understanding is, and they actually can trace it back, that why is that so? And they get back to understanding that it's because of previous experience. So a lot of tolerance, acceptance, non-judgment comes out of understanding this. And again, possibility, we can change the way we look at things. Glass half full rather than half empty. Transformation is where once we understand all these steps that have come before, we know that our emotions are changing and we can change them, or we can actually take space so that we don't cause it to erupt with people around us, because we know it gets bigger, because in the interconnected nature of everything, it's going to explode and get much bigger and ripple around and affect a whole lot of people. So we take space, the children learn to take space, breathe it out, simple mindfulness activities, and also other activities that we have. We have a peace room or a peace corner where they can go and process their emotions. All of this now, all of this understanding, this knowledge, we extend to others because we are all in the same boat. We all want happiness. Even the animals want happiness. Every being wants happiness, does not want to suffer. We are all interconnected, part of the one global family. And of course, all of our very life has come from others, and we depend on the works and the labors of others for our survival, constantly changing. We can make a positive difference in the world. Anything is possible. Our mind is changing, our brain is changing, becoming the kind of person we really want to be, that will bring happiness and kindness into the world. And so we see ourselves as so fortunate and able to benefit those who are not, and resonate with the stories of others. Empathy. Empathy is the foundation for compassion, and compassion is actually doing something about the loving kindness and connection we feel with others, repaying the kindness. So we know we can do it now, we feel empowered, and we do. And the children do lots of social service projects and kind acts just every day. And to finish, if you want others to be happy, practice compassion. If you want to be happy, practice compassion. His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama. And this brings us back to really, what science and a lot of research shows now, that doing good for others is good for us as well. And it's actually the true source of happiness. So thank you, everybody. Thank you very much.